Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Bruin Dash, the UCLA football show on Dash Sports TV. My name is Sam Connon. I'll be one of your hosts today, and I am joined once again by Jack Perez. Jack, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Sam. I know we're not talking about them on this show, but watching UCLA men's basketball tonight live in person, so that's going to be a great time. Glad to be back down here in Westwood. How are you doing, Sam?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm jealous I won't be at Poly with you tonight, but there's a lot there's a lot going on now. It's a little different than it was a month or so ago. And men's and women's basketball playing, football is ramping up, so there's a lot to be excited about. So we'll start with that. UCLA beat Arizona 27-10 on Saturday. Kind of ran away with it late. They had control most of the day, but we'll talk about the key takeaways from that game. And then also Demetric Felton. He looked amazing on Saturday. Just all-purpose back. He had over 200 rushing yards, career day, and he's really in the running for Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Year. So with a few games left on the slate, we'll talk about his chances at that and his role in the offense. And then we'll look ahead to this weekend's Arizona State game. If it or can, it'll be played. I guess we'll see if any more scheduling rearrangements have to be made, or if that's it. If it's Sun Devils against Bruins, what is it looking like? So that's what's on the slate today. If you have any thoughts on that or questions or concerns or anything like that, feel free to leave them in the live chat. We'll get around to all of them and make sure you guys are involved. But starting off, UCLA beats Arizona. Like I was saying, they had control pretty much most of the game after they went down in the first quarter. Pretty boring third quarter. They pull away in the fourth. So, Jack, what are your main takeaways from this game and what it could mean moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I went to the Rose Bowl to watch this game in person. It was quite exciting for a little while. And then, what a third quarter that was. It seemed like UCLA punted every single time they had the ball. It seemed like they were going 3 and out for a while. But you can't fault them in any way, shape, or form. That defense was amazing. I have not seen a UCLA defense like that since my time at UCLA. In the last 4 years, I can't remember a single defensive performance that matched that. Yeah, they had the game against Cal, but it still seemed like at times Cal had drives and that maybe they were going to come back. This one was all UCLA the entire way. The only time Arizona scored a touchdown was off a risky fourth down call from Chip Kelly that got stuffed. Arizona gets the ball within UCLA's 25-yard line. They score pretty easily. That's the only time all night that they were able to score a touchdown. Every other time, UCLA is able to keep them out of the end zone. And even on special teams, it looked pretty good. Obviously, Grant Gunnell went out after the first Arizona play on offense, so that was quite a big hit for that team. But even then, this UCLA defense looked stacked, and they really looked like a top 50 unit, which is very impressive compared to last year. What were your main takeaways, Sam?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of positives from this game. Winning by 17 points, that's big for UCLA, especially going into what could be a more challenging game against Arizona State. We'll see. But a lot of their defensive prowess this weekend had to do with, like you said, Grant Gunnell going out. Plummer is that may have been the worst performance I've seen from a Pac-12 quarterback this year, which granted isn't that many games because so many have gotten canceled, but it's still not a glowing review. He was pretty poor. They couldn't really trust him. Completion percentage under 50, no touchdowns, 2 picks. He really just was a total dud. And the second that Gunnell went down, you knew that Arizona didn't really have a chance, even though they went on and took a lead after that because of the field position game. That injury to Gunnell made it a pretty clear what the outcome was going to be. I still credit UCLA for taking advantage of that because that's what you have to do. You have to play with the cards you're dealt, whether it's a good hand or bad hand, and they made the most of a pretty good hand. So I'll definitely credit them there. And then when you're the opposing quarterback who's pretty good, maybe top half of the conference goes out, and you know he's not going to be able to do that much. All you need on the offensive side of the ball is to take care of the ball and play, just basically just dominate the time of possession. It's simple, and Chase Griffin did that, so I'll credit him there. He didn't turn the ball over. His stats were not very good. 129 yards passing, and didn't really do much on the ground despite the triple option. but he did what he needed to do, and he did what the situation demanded of him. So I guess we'll talk a little bit more about Chase. So what did you think of his performance this week, Jack? What do you think about the reads he made and just his arm, just all over the place? What do you think of him?
Chip Kelly didn't ask him to do much, and we expected that. He's not DTR. We've known he's not DTR. He's 5'11", and that even might be a little bit generous to him. He looks very short out there, especially compared to his line, but he did the job he was asked to do. He kept possession of the ball, didn't turn over. Yes, there were a lot of 3-and-outs there. You could see that they weren't quite as dynamic. There was no really scary option from them, especially from the quarterback position. We saw against in the Cal game, DTR ripped off these big runs. In the Colorado game, even when they were down, he ripped off that 61-yard touchdown. There was always that threat when Dorian was out there. With Chase, it's not the same. But, I mean, there's no way Chip Kelly was going to ask him to do that much. He wasn't getting first-team reps all spring train or all fall camp. He wasn't getting first-team reps the first couple weeks of practice. This was his first full week of practice. And, yeah, he didn't have a spectacular game. He threw one touchdown, but a lot of that was due to Britton Brown's yards after the catch. But he didn't turn the ball over. And after turning the ball over 3 times against an Oregon team, and which realistically probably cost UCLA that game or any chance of winning that game, just keeping the ball, even if it's going 3-and-out, at least you can punt that down the field. If you're getting it to Demetric, if you're getting it to Britton Brown, those are winning plays. Yes, I would love to see more from Chase Griffin. I don't know what's happening with Dorian this week, whether he's going to be able to come back to play. If he didn't test positive ever and it was just contact tracing, then he should probably be back in practice by Wednesday or Thursday, so they'll probably hand it back to him. But I was really happy with Chase Griffin, and he showed that the future is okay if Dorian decides to leave for the NFL early, or if he gets injured later this year or next year, anything like that happens, that Chip Kelly does have a reliable second option, which we did not expect coming into this year.
Yeah, see, I would disagree there. I think Chase is a pretty smart quarterback. He knows what he's doing out there, and Chip Kelly kind of simplifies the offense for him, knowing that he really doesn't have all the dynamism that DTR has. But the floor isn't any higher than it is when DTR is out there, and the ceiling is so much lower. He had that one seam route, Dulcich. And other than that, I don't think there was a ball that went 8 yards past the line of scrimmage through the air. So it's good. He proved that he can be a starting quarterback on a team with a good defense and a good running game and beat bad teams, which is good. You're going to need to do that. Like they did this week. They needed to beat Arizona, and they did, because Chase Griffin is a smart quarterback who proved he can take care of the ball and beat inferior teams when he has a ground game defense behind him. I don't think that he showed that he can win you a game or even come close, because there were open receivers he was missing. They weren't even running routes downfield. They weren't really calling anything for Chase to let it rip, and that's really going to limit your offense when you play a team like USC, when you're probably going to be in a shootout, or when you're coming from behind. Like DTR, for as mistake-ridden as he has been, he can will you into a comeback because he's so dynamic and he's so explosive. And even if he isn't the most accurate or throw the hardest ball, he's got enough touch and enough confidence where he can put together some chunk plays after chunk play and lead you to a touchdown when you need one. I don't think Chase can do that. He was missing guys in the red zone. He was missing guys on third down. They four? I think it was 3-and-outs to end the third quarter. It was an ugly quarter, and that's kind of what took a little bit of confidence away from Chase, from my perspective. He can fill in when you're the favorite, but I don't think he gives you any more of a future than Dorian or anyone else on this roster.
Yeah, both starting quarterbacks are now 1-1. Both had games where they kind of went down, were able to bring it back to within one score, and then both had a game where their defense dominated and they were just able to run away with it. So, I mean, obviously Dorian is the better quarterback. We've seen that he's more dynamic, but I don't think that this team is in trouble with Chase if they have to go forward with him. We got a question in the chat now that says, do you think Chip Kelly will buy himself a couple more years if the team wins the next 2 games? Obviously, he's won 2 games this year. He's at 500, which he hadn't been in his entire time in Westwood. Does he buy himself a couple more years? I'm skeptical. I've been on the very anti-Chip Kelly train for a little while now, but he's done well this year. He adapted. He got something going, even with a backup quarterback. He looked competitive against Oregon. Now, maybe that shines off the Oregon game a little bit because, Oregon State beat Oregon, and that was a bad loss for Oregon. And now maybe they shouldn't actually be the number 11 team in the country like they were when they were playing UCLA. But it was a backup quarterback on a short week, and Chip Kelly adapted. And Chip Kelly's team, if they win the next 2 games, who knows? A USC win buys you a lot. That's all I know, is that every time UCLA is able to beat USC, the coach is not fired, and it seems to buy them a lot of good grace.
I think there's a lot of good feelings around the Rose Bowl in Westwood when Chip beat USC in 2018, which was, and then they almost beat Stanford the week after. So there was a lot of confidence at the end of that season. Then they opened the year at Cincinnati the next year, and they looked horrible. They lost, and it was a mess, and people were calling for Chip to be fired already. So it buys you good grace going into an offseason. It doesn't buy you good grace in the long term. This year, Chip Kelly needed to win the Pac-12 to just take himself off the hot seat. Chip can win these next 2 games, finish 4-2, maybe even win that last game. And unless he ends up in the Pac-12 championship game, he can go 5-2, and he's still FBI's most wanted, the top of the hot seat list in college football next year. He wasn't this year because of contracts and buyouts, but starting next year, that's when it matters. He could have bought himself a little bit more wiggle room with a great season. I don't think a good season is going to take him off the hot seat.
Yeah. I mean, obviously his contract is the biggest issue. He's getting paid a lot to lead this team. And when you're paying a coach a lot, you expect good results. And over the last 2 years, he hasn't produced that. But maybe this year he gets that 4-2, 5-2, brings that confidence into next year. And who knows, Dorian comes back for his senior year. You get a lot of guys back to come back with their extra year of eligibility. Maybe this is a winning team in Westwood again. Maybe you go 8-4, 9-3, and all of a sudden Chip Kelly gets himself a new contract. And I mean, maybe Martin Jarman wants to bring in his own guys, especially as a new athletics director, but maybe he's willing to roll the dice with a proven coach like Chip Kelly.
Yeah, Chip Kelly's not done, but I just think that he needed to, for this season, to help his case, he needed to win the Pac-12. So it's a wash. He's starting next year on the hot seat, and it's all up to next year. If he can get 9 wins next year, then yeah, he can stick around. But I don't think that has anything to do with this year at this point, considering not that it's a lost season. They're 500 and they're playing pretty well, but it's not anything that will save his job outright. So we'll move on to the next topic, which is based around a column that I wrote for Sports Pac-12. It's a site that Dash Sports TV has a partnership with. We have our hosts write columns that go up on sportspac12.com, and you can find them on Twitter at sportspac12. So we got columns every week. So one week it's by me, the next week it's by Jack. This week I wrote a column about how Demetric Felton is the favorite for Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Year. Obviously, he had a great game against Arizona, over 200 yards rushing. He was UCLA's leading receiver in receptions. He caught all of his targets, and he's just been getting better and better. Every week, he has more rushing yards than the last. So, Jack, I'll let you chip in a little bit too, because obviously I'm really high on Felton right now. Where do you think he ranks in the conversation for Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Year, and do you think he can just solidify himself in these next 2 weeks?
If he has huge games against Arizona State and, more importantly, against USC, he will be the Offensive Player of the Year. Do I see that happening? Probably not. I mean, a lot of the teams we face, UCLA's faced so far, Oregon's defense lost one of their best guys really early on into the second half, I believe. That's when Felton started getting going. This Arizona defense was not good at all in containing him. The Colorado defense was okay. I mean, he didn't have a huge game that week. The game against Cal obviously was a big offensive performance from everyone. I think right now you're looking at a guy like Jamar Jefferson is in the lead for Offensive Player of the Year. He's got over 100 yards more, or 100 more yards total rushing this season. He's a proven back, and he just had a huge game against an Oregon team that was nationally ranked. And not only just a huge game, a huge win. That's why I think if Demetric Felton goes off against USC, that'll really push him into the conversation. When Josh Kelly had that huge game against USC in the win 2 years ago in Chip Kelly's first year, that really elevated his status. And then you saw the next year, he just kept feeding off of that momentum. If Demetric Felton wants to become the offensive player of the year, he's going to have to put up big games against good teams, not just big games against bad teams.
Yeah, that's fair. But I wouldn't say that if you're going to give Jefferson credit for having a great game against Oregon, you have to do the same thing for Felton, who had a great game against Oregon last week as a receiver and as a ball carrier. So Felton, just by the eye test, I know I'm not one for the eye test. I love stats and I love just like the numbers don't lie. I get it. But watching Felton these last 2 weeks with Dorian Thompson-Robinson out, he is a guy you can run your offense through, and there aren't too many guys in the country, let alone the Pac-12, the entire country, where you can rely on a running back to be your offense. There are great running backs out there, like at Alabama or wherever, but they have a good quarterback too, and the opposing defenses aren't 100% sure what Alabama's going to do because they got Mac, who's almost a Heisman contender, who's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. But UCLA with Chase Griffin, everyone knows, okay, they're either, Griffin had 20 pass attempts. UCLA is running the ball. Maybe it's a triple option, maybe it's an end around, whatever. They can sell out for the run, and they still can't stop Demetric Felton. He was juking guys out at the line. He was stiff-arming guys, spin moves, stretching for first downs. He really had it all going on this week against Arizona. And I think that he's only gotten better. So you take that into an Arizona State game, and then you take that into a USC game. I think he has a path to winning it, and it's a pretty clear path. It's not uncontended. Jamar Jefferson is having a great year as well. Statistically, he's probably an inch or two ahead of Felton at this point. But I have more confidence that Felton will finish strong and continue to grow than Jefferson, who I think is also a very good running back, but just Felton checks all the boxes for me. Both teams are 2-2, Oregon State and UCLA. I really feel like Felton is going to carry this team, whether that's one more win or two more wins. And who knows if they're going to count the championship game, championship week stats in there too. But Felton could have an all-time UCLA season, which is weird because he's replacing Joshua Kelly, who is one of the favorite running backs in Westwood in recent memory. And Felton might one-up him 1 year later, which is just crazy to me, considering he was a receiver at the start of last season.
Yeah, I think a really big point that you brought up was the fact that they've both played 4 games. That is a big deal for these teams. A lot of teams haven't been able to play a full schedule. Who knows what Jaden Daniels would have done this year? We'll talk about him in a little bit, but he might have been the offensive player of the year. He might have been a Heisman contender. I know you're not that high on him, but we'll never know now because they played 1 game. I mean, Keaton Slovis has had games canceled the past couple of weeks, I think. Their game might even be in jeopardy this week. They had to move it to Sunday. Any of the Washington State guys, Colorado had his game canceled. Utah has gone to play games, but they don't look like the team really that is going to be competing. So playing the next 2 games will be huge. Even getting to those games will be huge because we know Demetric Felton's going to get his touches. Chip Kelly's going to feed him. You would be ridiculous to not feed your best player. And that is what Demetric Felton is on this UCLA team. He is the best player by far. Anytime you see him out on the field, he is the best player on the field. I can't think of a single defense that would be able to contain him and completely. And if he's contained, then you've got other options. There's a lot of good guys on this UCLA offense. They're really underrated at the moment. Yes, they haven't had a ton of great performances, especially that Colorado game. While they did score 42 points eventually, it seemed like that was only because all of a sudden they started to go aggressive. They started to go deep. They needed something to catch up. But in the first half, they looked awful. When you don't turn the ball over, you look great. Demetric Felton has turned the ball over once or twice this year, which obviously is not a good sign. But if he can just keep going and keep steady with his pace, if he hits 200 yards for the next 2 games, he is easily the offensive player of the year. If not, I'm thinking he's going to be first team Pac-12 all around. That's going to be his thing because he's doing all right on kickoff returns, but I think they'll give him that, and they'll give Jamar Jefferson first team all Pac-12 running back.
Yeah, I mean, well, there are 2 running backs on the team. I think Felton and Jefferson are easily like 1A, 1B, whatever order you want to put them in. They're head and shoulders above the rest this year just because they're the two guys who have played 4 games and they're playing better than anyone else out there. I don't want to undersell Jefferson. He's having a great year, and I get it. But when I see Felton, I see a Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Year just in a vacuum. Zach Moss won it last year. Zach Moss, if you take his per game scrimmage yards and put that across 4 games, which Felton has played, he would have had 555 yards from scrimmage per 4 games, and Felton right now is at 641. So he's getting more yards than last year's Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Year, scoring more than 1 touchdown per game, same way Zach Moss did last year. And yeah, UCLA is not as good as Utah was last year. They're not pushing for a college football playoff spot, but still, just eye test, a little bit of the numbers mixed in there. Felton is playing like a Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Year, and I really trust him to finish it off against Arizona State, USC, whoever it is that last week, and solidify himself at the top of that class come year's end.
Yeah, I think the last thing I'll point out here is he did come up a little limp near the end of the Arizona game. Chip Kelly needs to take care of this dude. You cannot have your best offensive player get hurt, especially when you have 9 other guys that were still out through contact tracing. Yes, they should hopefully be coming back this week, but if Demetric Felton's out, this team looks completely different. Yes, you have Kaz out in the backfield. You got Brandon Brown as your power back. If Dorian Thompson-Robinson comes back, that's another element back there. But this team is going to live or die through Demetric Felton. And if that injury does hamper him at all, that is a bad sign. It doesn't seem like it was. Chip Kelly said he's back in practice today and that there were no signs of it. So that's a good sign. But if anything happens to Demetric Felton, this team will be doomed.
Yeah, you survived. UCLA survived these last 2 weeks. They split without Dorian Thompson-Robinson because Felton was playing at a video game level. And if you don't have either of them, this might be the worst offense in the Pac-12. Which is, I mean, they have a very good O-line, but just the way that they run the offense, you need Felton and or DTR to compete. And hopefully this week they're back. So we'll take that and move on to the upcoming game against Arizona State, who is 0-1 this year, and UCLA is 2-2. It's a little weird, like a lot of things this year, like a lot of things this season. Who knows what will happen? Arizona State has been hit harder by COVID than anyone else in the Pac-12, maybe anyone else in the country outside of maybe Wisconsin or Houston, or they've just been obliterated by COVID. And who knows? Maybe we play this game on Saturday. Maybe it's supposed to be 7:30 Pacific. We'll see. I'm a little skeptical. We might have another last second move around of the schedule. USC could get canceled. Arizona State could get canceled. Who knows? But for now, UCLA against Arizona State. What are your thoughts, Jack? What do you think lies ahead for this game?
Let's not put aside the COVID issues, because not only has Arizona State had COVID issues, UCLA as a school has had things happening right now. I mean, we just got breaking news that the men's basketball game tonight is postponed due to issues in the Long Beach State protocol. I just got an email on that right now, so that's breaking. Who knows if this game's going to happen? Who knows if they'll get out to Arizona and Arizona will have another 20 test positive? I mean, their coach had it, and it seemed like half of their team had a COVID test, either through contact tracing or a positive test. UCLA had it. They've had a couple guys within the program, a couple people within the athletic staff. They've had 9 guys out through contact tracing through the past 2 weeks. Do not put that aside, because these things can change in an instant. And Sam and I might be talking right now about Arizona State, and then all of a sudden we're going to be playing Utah this weekend. Who knows what's going to happen? But if they do play Arizona State, there's a couple things you have to watch out for, and that's rust and rest. Because Arizona State is going to come out rusty, but they are also going to be fired up to finally play a game, and they are not going to have any single issues with guys being really hurt or, feeling tired out there. Whereas UCLA's played all 4 games. They've had tough matchups. They had a Cal game on a Sunday and then followed that up with at Oregon on another Saturday. Granted, they were back home. Arizona State's not that far of a drive, or if they fly there, that's pretty good. But you really have to watch out to see if Arizona State comes out hot. That is a bad sign for UCLA, because this team should be rusty. Jayden Daniels probably hasn't thrown a football in a live game in almost 3 weeks by that point. You got to come out attacking, and I think that's the biggest key for UCLA this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this UCLA defense and offense, both sides of the ball, have been very aggressive these past couple weeks. Chip Kelly knows that without a dynamic playmaker at quarterback and Dorian Thompson Robinson, he had to do that. So it'll be interesting to see if they keep that up with Dorian back, assuming he is back, which we don't know. But numbers wise, days wise, it looks like he'll probably be back. I'm really looking forward to this quarterback battle, though, Jack. I've been this was circled on my calendar from day one this year. I had a column earlier in the year where I said Dorian Thompson Robinson could be the best quarterback in the Pac-12 by year's end, and he was playing really well through 2 weeks. Not the best in the conference. Tyler Shuck was doing better. Keaton Slovis was playing a little better, maybe not up to his standards, but still probably better than DTR. Jaden Daniels in his one game was trash. He was horrible against USC. I have not been the biggest proponent of Jaden Daniels, but that's mostly because I thought he was overrated, not because I thought he was horrible. That performance against USC, sorry, that was atrocious. He was 11 for 23, so that's a 48% completion percentage. He had 134 passing yards, which is not very good. And it's even worse when you look at the fact that his lone touchdown, was how long? Like a 35-yarder or something like that, just off the top of my head. That was pretty much a lateral. If they reviewed it, maybe it's a backwards pass, maybe it's a run. Either way, his arm against USC week 1 was bad. He couldn't hit receivers. He couldn't put together a drive at the end when he had time. Everyone remembers that crazy USC comeback with the onside kick. The one mistake that USC made is they gave Arizona State a lot of time to actually come back and win that game. It was like a minute and a half or something. And Jaden Daniels did nothing. He choked on that last drive. He choked in the fourth quarter. It was a mess. He's not a bad quarterback. I don't expect him to have that bad of a game probably ever again, especially this week against UCLA when, like you said, he's going to be hungry. I get it. But given his horrible performance week 1 and Dorian's hit or miss performances week 1 and 2, I'm really looking forward to the two of them going head to head. I think a lot of people overlook quarterback battles or make excuses or say they're not on the field at the same time or it's a team game. Whoever wins this game that's going to be a huge plus for the winning quarterback, especially to prove that they are a winning quarterback and an athletic, explosive quarterback, because we know both of them are. And I'm just really looking forward to see who comes out on top in that individual battle and how the team battle influences that.
Yeah, and I'm sure our friends over at Double Dash are loving your Jaden Daniels hate comments right now. They've never told us anything about that before, so that'll be interesting. As we wrap up here, Sam, last week I think we both predicted the UCLA to win, so I think we're pretty good right now. What is your prediction for the game?
A score. I'll get to the score eventually. I'll think of it while I'm talking. So, like I said, it's going to be Jaden Daniels against DTR. That is the headline of this game. But UCLA's defense is a lot more aggressive and a lot more physical than Arizona State's defense. They're getting in the backfield. Meanwhile, UCLA's offensive line has allowed 3 sacks the entire season, which that's great. So Dorian is protected and he's back and at full strength. And the UCLA defense is getting into the pocket, stopping guys at the line of scrimmage, making things difficult for Jaden Daniels, making him play from behind. I think UCLA comes out on top here. It's not a lock because it's going to be a really good game. I'd say probably the second and third best teams, maybe third and fourth best teams in the Pac-12 South. This is a premier matchup, and I'll go UCLA wins 34-31. It's a close one.
Interesting. I think the biggest stat that jumps out to me throughout the season is that UCLA has won the fourth quarters 28-3. Last year they were around -50 in the fourth quarters through 12 games. This year they're plus 25 through 4 games. That is a huge turnaround for Chip Kelly's team. It shows that they can close out these games. They haven't all been particularly close. The 2 losses have been close. The 2 wins have been shootout. But the defense turned up at the end of a game, and that is what you need from this team. So I'm going to go a little bit more defensive than you. I'm going to go 21-17 UCLA.
All right, we're both picking one-score games. It will be an interesting game coming up this week against Arizona State, assuming it gets played. So just want to give everyone a quick reminder. Later this week on Friday, we will have a crossover episode. It won't be Bruin Dash, but Jack will be on a special episode of Devil Dash with one of the guys from over there to talk about the upcoming game. Once again, assuming it gets played. So look forward to that at the end of the week. Thank you for joining live. If you joined live, or if you're watching recorded, thanks a lot for stopping by too. Dash Sports TV, you can follow us on Twitter at Dash Sports TV. You can find us online at dashsports.tv. As I was talking about earlier, we have a partnership with Sports Pac 12, which is sportspac12.com. They're on Twitter at Sports Pac 12. They publish all of our written content. There are links on our site, and they're written by our hosts and our columnists. So thanks to them for giving us that platform. Jack, is there anything else you want to say?
Just so glad to be here with you, Sam. Once again, looking forward to this game this weekend.
Well, I'm sorry you don't get to go to Poly tonight. Fingers crossed it happens later this week. But thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.